The sea wind howled over the Red Keep as Cersei Lannister stood at her balcony, watching the dark waves crash against Blackwater Bay. Her wine was untouched. Below her, the capital was tense but quiet, unaware of the monstrous decision she had already made. Dragonstone, Daenerys Targaryen's foothold in Westeros, was the spark, and Cersei intended to snuff it out before the fire could consume her. Qyburn stood beside her, cloaked in black, eyes glinting with grim anticipation. "The wildfire has been placed, Your Grace," he said, his voice low and reverent. Beneath the castle, the caves, the passages, the shipment arrived by night. None suspected. Cersei didn't look at him. She stared across the water, toward the island she could just barely see on clear days. "And the Raven to Euron. He sails tonight. He will not linger to see the flames. The Iron Fleet will be far from the blast." She finally sipped the wine, sweet, dark, numbing. "Good. Let the Dragon Queen find ash when she returns." Dragonstone had once been her family's ancient seat. Now it was the foreign queen's throne. Cersei could not allow her enemies to keep sacred ground, especially when they came with dragons, armies, and titles. She remembered the wildfire that devoured the Sept of Baelor. That was a warning. This would be a message. The trap was timed. Qyburn's agents had planted the wildfire caches throughout the keep, deep in tunnels none had walked in centuries. When Daenerys and her council reassembled, when her Unsullied had returned, when Tyrion and Varys were inside the walls, then and only then would the fire be unleashed. But the problem with wildfire was that it didn't care about sides. On Dragonstone, the air was heavy with fog as Daenerys walked the shores of the island. Drogon circled above, screeching like he sensed something wrong. Tyrion had returned from a fruitless mission to rally allies in the Reach, and Varys had been quiet, troubled. Missandei noticed it first. The castle smelled different, like oil, like rot and something older. Inside the hall, Jon Snow waited. He'd arrived 2 days earlier with Davos and a few northern riders. His warnings about Cersei had been dismissed at first, even by Daenerys. Now his eyes searched the stone walls nervously. "She's too quiet," he said, pacing near the war table carved in the shape of Westeros. "Cersei hasn't made a move in weeks." "That's not like her." Tyrion leaned forward, brow furrowed. "She's not waiting. She's planning. We've underestimated her before." Then the floor shook. It was subtle at first. A rumble of vibration. They all stopped speaking. Drogon shrieked again outside, louder this time, then dove away from the keep. Rhaegal followed, both dragons screeching into the clouds, and then came the sound. A deep roar from beneath. The floor cracked near the edges of the hall. Heat surged through the stone. Jon's eyes widened. "Get out!" They didn't have time. The floor beneath Missandei erupted in green fire, consuming her in seconds. Varys screamed as another explosion tore through the corridor. Grey Worm shouted for his men, pushing Daenerys toward the exit. But it was too late. One after another, rooms ignited. The air filled with screams and the sound of stone collapsing. Daenerys turned, trying to reach the throne room, but it was already gone. The corridor where Tyrion had been standing vanished in a burst of green flame, his fate uncertain. The entire keep was swallowing itself in fire and ruin. She barely escaped. Grey Worm, bloodied and scorched, dragged her to the shores. Drogon landed just in time, allowing her to climb atop him, sobbing, her eyes red with fury and grief. Dragonstone was gone. Her council, perhaps half her army, burned alive in her own home. As she flew away on Drogon's back, the green fires still erupting below her, Daenerys Targaryen looked back once. She said nothing. Her silence was not weakness. It was the calm before something worse than fire. In King's Landing, Cersei Lannister smiled for the first time in weeks. The flight from Dragonstone to the mainland was long, but Daenerys felt none of it. She was silent atop Drogon, her arms tight around his neck, her face streaked with ash and salt. Her silver hair was tangled and singed at the ends. Grey Worm sat behind her, barely conscious, his armor blackened and cracked from heat. The smell of burning flesh still clung to them. She didn't cry, not yet. Not when she saw the blackened smoke still curling over the island that had once been her home. Not when she realized Missandei, her dearest friend, was gone. Not even when she saw Tyrion's coin on the ground before she flew off, the same coin he always flipped between his fingers when he was nervous. Now melted and scorched, they landed deep in the woods beyond Blackwater Bay, near the burned remains of an old watchtower. The Unsullied, who had been on patrol, and the Dothraki, who had stayed behind, gathered around her slowly, confused. Some wept, others stared in stunned silence. No one asked what happened. The sky had already told the story. Daenerys didn't speak to any of them for hours. She sat beside a cold fire pit, her legs folded beneath her, her eyes fixed on the ground. Grey Worm stood beside her like a spectre, his hand resting on the hilt of his sword. No one dared come close. It was Jon Snow who finally arrived, his hair matted with ash, his voice hoarse. He'd escaped through a broken tunnel with Davos. They'd seen the horror with their own eyes. Men, women, even the Unsullied burning alive, screaming for help that never came. She did this, he said quietly. Cersei, it was her. Daenerys didn't look up. How do you know? I know because no one else would burn an entire castle from beneath without warning. Wildfire, Dany? The same fire she used to destroy the Sept of Baelor. The same fire your father stockpiled in case the city ever turned on him. She used his madness. Daenerys' voice trembled. And now they'll call me the Mad Queen when I answer her. She took your home, Jon said. Your friends. You have every right to be angry. I'm not angry, she said, her voice hardening. I'm ready. That night she called what remained of her council. Only a few remained, Grey Worm, Davos, Jon. Ser Jorah was still in the north. The Dothraki stood outside, waiting for blood. The Unsullied, grim and disciplined, awaited orders. We will not mourn today, Daenerys said, her voice rising through the night like a blade. We will not bury our dead. We will not build statues for the fallen. We will take what was stolen. Fire was her choice. Now it is mine, Jon frowned. You can't become what she is. I won't, Daenerys replied. She burned a home. I will burn a throne. No one challenged her after that. In King's Landing, Cersei Lannister bathed in rosewater while the city celebrated in ignorance. The wildfire had done more than destroy Dragonstone. It had shattered Daenerys' morale, or so Cersei believed. Euron Greyjoy returned, smug and reeking of seaweed. Boasting of the fire he saw from miles away, the sky turned green. He laughed. Like the gods themselves were vomiting fire, Cersei raised a goblet of arbor gold, a fitting end to pretenders. Qyburn brought her a parchment sealed with Lannister wax. The Iron Bank sends word. They are pleased. You've eliminated a financial threat and secured naval superiority. Good, she said, smiling. They can lend me the crown twice over now. She thought it was over, that the Dragon Queen would slink away across the sea or beg for forgiveness at the gates. She thought she'd won, but in the coming nights, ravens would fly over Westeros bearing a single message in High Valyrian. The Queen of Ashes comes, and behind her 2 dragons and a storm of vengeance. The ravens flew far and fast. Each carried the same grim message in Valyrian common tongue and even Dothraki pictographs. Across Westeros, lords and small folk alike read the same 4 words with trembling hands. The Queen of Ashes comes. In the Reach, the remnants of House Tyrell's bannermen debated whether to kneel or hide. In the Vale, Lord Jon Royce narrowed his eyes, wondering whether this queen would burn the Eyrie too. Even in Winterfell, Sansa Stark read the note with a cold knot in her stomach. She remembered her father's execution, her husband's betrayal, and now her brother standing beside a queen who promised fire. She will not stop, Sansa muttered. Not after what Cersei's done. And now Jon's beside her. He won't stop her either. But it was in King's Landing where fear had not yet taken root. Cersei paced through the halls of the Red Keep, confidence swelling in her chest. Her gold-armored guards lined every corridor. Qyburn stood nearby with news, scattered reports of dragon movement, but no sign of a siege. They're too few to take the city, he said. Your wildfire has wounded their numbers. Their council is gone. Exactly, Cersei replied. She'll lash out in grief. That's what they do, the Targaryens. Rage, scream, burn. Then they die. She smirked and turned to Euron, who stood near the Iron Throne like a wolf licking its teeth. "Let her come. The Scorpions are ready. The Iron Fleet blocks Blackwater Bay. She will die in the skies, and the people will cheer her fall." But Cersei had forgotten one thing. Fear flies faster than ships. Outside the capital, Daenerys and her forces gathered not in formation, but in silence. The war camp was smaller now, broken but dangerous. Fires burned low. No music, no laughter. Just the sounds of preparation, the sharpening of blades, the hammering of makeshift armor, the breathing of soldiers who knew they might never see tomorrow. Jon watched her from the edge of the camp. She stood beside Drogon, her hand resting against his warm scales, whispering to him in High Valyrian. Her voice was soft, almost gentle, but her eyes were something else entirely. Her eyes were something else entirely. "She hasn't spoken to me in 2 days," Jon said to Davos. "Not since she saw what Cersei did." "She lost too much," Davos said. "You can't expect her to grieve like others." "It's not grief," Jon muttered. "It's focus. Cold, deadly focus." He didn't say the rest. That part of him feared what she might become, and a darker part feared what he might do to stop it if it came to that. That evening she summoned them all. No grand speeches, no maps, just a simple command. "Tomorrow we fly. The Iron Fleet will burn. The Scorpions will fail. We take the skies, and we do not come down until the Red Keep falls." Jon stepped forward, unsure. "You plan to attack the city directly?" "There are thousands of innocents. I will give them a chance," Daenerys said. "I will burn only the guilty. But if they stand between me and Cersei, they will fall too." He looked into her face and saw no hesitation. Just a woman who had buried her best friend in fire and was ready to return the favor. The next dawn came blood-red. Clouds hung low and heavy. The city was waking. Merchants opened stalls. Children played in alleyways. Bells chimed faintly through the streets, and then came the sound, not drums, not horns, wings. The sky cracked open as Drogon and Rhaegal descended through the clouds like reapers. Fire lit the horizon. Euron Greyjoy stood aboard the silence, his eyes wide as he saw the first torrent of flame consume one of his prized ships. The Iron Fleet had no time to reposition, no chance to run. Drogon dove through the masts, breathing molten death, setting sailcloth, wood, and men ablaze. Rhaegal swept behind, crushing another scorpion before it could fire. The ballista bolts soared into the sky, missing again and again. Their aim was blind against creatures that moved like shadows in the storm. Within moments, the entire fleet was ash floating on the bay. From the Red Keep, Cersei watched in stunned silence. Her face tightened as she realized her fleet, her glorious navy, was gone. Her confidence wavered just a flicker, but she caught it. Qyburn whispered, "She's coming." "And she is not alone." Cersei turned to her guard. "Then let her come." "I will not run." But even she couldn't pretend not to hear the sound of wings, growing louder by the minute. The Red Keep had stood for centuries, watching kings rise and fall, blood flow through its dungeons, and secrets buried beneath its stone. Now it shook. Stone groaning, windows rattling, bells swinging wildly without a single hand pulling them. Cersei stood at the highest balcony of Maegor's Holdfast, staring out as flames consumed the bay. Below, the Iron Fleet had become nothing more than twisted wood and screaming men. Even the waters boiled in patches where wildfire floated back to the surface and ignited. "They're coming," Qyburn said again, clutching a scroll in trembling hands. "The dragons have broken through the outer defenses. Your Grace, the Scorpions have failed." Cersei finished bitterly. She turned, gowns sweeping behind her, the smell of smoke leaking into the chamber. "Have the Lannister army stand inside the gates. No retreat, no surrender. If they run, they'll die in the streets. If they stand, they'll die in glory. My queen, we must consider another path." Cersei's eyes burned with something deeper than fear. Pride. "This city has no room for cowards. Not anymore." Beyond the walls, Daenerys hovered in the clouds atop Drogon. The sky churned dark above her, the wind pulling at her scorched silver hair. Below her, the people of King's Landing screamed and scattered like ants. Some fled into homes, some ran toward the gates, others simply dropped to their knees, praying to gods who no longer answered. Daenerys was watching, waiting. Her eyes weren't on the streets, they were on the Red Keep, that towering monument of Lannister arrogance. That castle where her father was murdered, where Robert Baratheon had claimed victory, where Cersei sat now wrapped in gold and lies. Drogon growled beneath her, his wings slicing the sky. Jon Snow rode through the streets on horseback, trying to keep the northern men from butchering fleeing civilians. "Stand down!" he yelled. "The city is broken, we've won!" But Grey Worm had no such mercy. His eyes were on the walls, on the banners, on the Red Keep, and in his heart only revenge. The Unsullied followed without question, cutting down Lannister guards even as they threw down swords and begged for peace. Dothraki's screams echoed from the other end of the city as the Horse Lords charged through the gates, slicing anything in their path. Fire roared overhead. The Queen of Ashes had entered her storm. Inside the Red Keep, Cersei paced. Her breath came shorter with each explosion outside. How is she already here? We had time. She should have had to siege the city. Qyburn tried to steady her. Your Grace, please. We must leave. The secret tunnels. I am the Queen of the Seven Kingdoms, she snapped. I don't crawl through rats' tunnels like a coward. Just then, the tower shook violently. Part of the wall crumbled. A scream echoed down the hallway. A servant running to warn the Queen was crushed by falling debris. And finally, the first pillar of flame struck the keep itself. Drogon screamed above them, a roar loud enough to crack windows. His fire poured onto the upper towers, melting spires and setting the banners of House Lannister ablaze. The lion burned. Far below, Jon watched in horror. The Queen wasn't stopping. He pushed through panicked crowds, past broken carts and crumbled walls. He saw a woman holding a burned child, a man crawling with his hands gone. This wasn't war. This was judgment. Davos caught him. She's lost control. No, Jon whispered. She chose this. He looked up, locking eyes with Drogon as the dragon circled once more, screaming. Behind him, Daenerys was a silhouette, silver and red. Fire reflected in her eyes, her jaw clenched. Tears streaking her ash-covered face. She was burning the city that dared protect the woman who killed her family. Cersei finally broke. The fire was coming. She heard the stone shatter, the screams of her guards, the crack of collapsing ceilings. She turned and ran. Qyburn followed. The tunnels. Now, Your Grace. In the belly of the Red Keep, Jaime Lannister was already fighting through dust and fire. He had come alone, ignoring the army, driven by a last foolish hope to save his sister, his twin, the woman he both loved and hated in the same breath. He found her in the corridor leading to the crypts, her gown torn, her crown askew. She looked at him with wide, disbelieving eyes. You came back? I always do, he said quietly. She ran to him, clinging to him like a child. We have to go. She's burning everything. He looked up, ashes falling like snow. We may not get far. I don't care, she said, her voice cracking. Just stay. Just stay with me. The walls began to shake again. A low groan, like the castle itself was dying. Then came the roar. Drogon's fire hit the corridor behind them, swallowing it whole in seconds. The walls groaned like wounded beasts. Dust choked the air. Stones once carved with the history of kings rained from above, as if the gods themselves wanted to bury the Red Keep forever. Jaime held Cersei tightly, one arm wrapped around her as he pulled her down the collapsing corridor. The golden hand he once wore like a symbol of shame was now wrapped around the only person he had never been able to leave. This way, he gasped, leading her through the broken arches. But the tunnel was gone, caved in. The secret passage Tyrion had told him about, the one meant to be their salvation, was now blocked by a mountain of rubble and flame. Cersei stared at it in shock. No, it was here. We could have gotten out. There's no out anymore, Jaime said softly, sweat and soot streaking his face. She turned to him, terrified, but not of death. I don't want to die down here. Not like this. "You won't die alone," Jaime whispered. She looked into his eyes, those same blue eyes that had watched her lie, manipulate, kill, and yet still, they loved her, even now. After everything, the ceiling cracked. The last pillar collapsed, and the last thing they saw was each other. The Red Keep buried the Lannister twins in silence. Born together, they left the world the same way, wrapped in each other's arms, beneath the rubble of their family's legacy. Beneath the rubble of their family's legacy. Above, Daenerys circled the tower one last time, smoke spiraling around her like a cloak. Her face was unreadable. Drogon beat his wings slowly now, exhausted, but still alight with power. The Red Keep was broken, its spine cracked, its towers shattered. No scorpions remained, no archers, no defiance, only fire, and the sound of bells tolling too late. She had expected satisfaction, vindication, some great moment of triumph where justice would feel like justice, but it didn't. Her heart was ice under the heat. Below her the people ran. The same people who had cheered for Ned Stark's death, who had thrown rocks at her brother in Flea Bottom, who had bowed to Robert, Joffrey, Tommen, and now Cersei. They were never loyal, only afraid. Let them fear something real, Drogon snarled, sensing her mood. With a final growl, he landed on the shattered plaza near the gates of the keep. Daenerys dismounted in silence, stepping through ash as thick as snow. Her boots crushed bones and burned debris beneath her feet. Grey Worm waited for her, his armor smeared with blood. Behind him, Unsullied stood with blades dripping. Dothraki surrounded the square, some laughing, some looting, others smeared in gore. She looked around and asked only one question: "Is she dead?" "We believe so," Grey Worm replied. The keep collapsed. No one survived that section. No body. Not yet, she nodded once. Burn the rest. Let the world know what loyalty means. Jon arrived just in time to see her standing alone in the ash, a black cloak whipping behind her. Drogon sat behind her like a mountain, eyes watching every soldier, every movement, the Queen of Ashes. He dismounted and walked slowly through the ruins. Around him, children cried. Women wept over corpses. The streets ran red and green. Men who had surrendered lay piled in corners, throats slit clean. He could barely speak. "Dany, what have you done?" She turned to him slowly, her eyes cold and wet with smoke. What needed to be done? "This wasn't justice," he said, stepping closer. "This was vengeance. They were the same thing today. They weren't. You know they weren't," her jaw clenched. "You weren't there, Jon. You didn't see what she did. I love those people. Missandei, Tyrion, Varys. She killed them with one decision. She burned my home. You think I could let that stand? You burned hers in return, and everyone inside it." Her eyes flickered, but she didn't flinch. "Then we're even." He stared at her, his heart breaking. "This isn't the woman I followed." "No," she said, stepping toward him. "This is the woman you crowned." Silence stretched between them. He wanted to say more, beg her to stop, plead with her to rule with mercy, but he saw it in her eyes. This was not the last fire. It was the first, and now the realm would burn with her vision. The ash never stopped falling. King's Landing had gone quiet, the kind of quiet that came after too much screaming. Even the crows didn't come anymore. The dead were too charred to feed on. Daenerys stood before the scorched iron throne, or what remained of it. The great hall of the Red Keep had collapsed, one side open to the sky, rubble littering the floor. The throne itself was bent, half melted by wildfire and dragon flame, twisted iron and ghosted memories. But it still stood. She reached for it. Her fingers hovered just above the blackened metal. Once it had been the dream. Now it was nothing more than a symbol. A lie dressed in steel. Behind her, Jon entered the ruined hall. His boots crunched over burnt stone and bone. He said nothing at first, just stood there, watching her silhouette against the soft glow of the cloudy sky. "You did it," he said, voice low. "She's dead. The throne is yours." Daenerys didn't turn around. It was never about her, Jon. It was about what she represented. "And what do you represent now?" he asked, stepping closer. "What do you call this, peace?" She turned at that, finally facing him. Her face was pale beneath the soot, but her eyes still burned with purpose. "Peace is not given, Jon. It's forced. You think the people will just wake up and become better on their own? No, they follow strength. They always have. Fear, power. That's what they understand. That's not the world we fought for. No, she said quietly. It's the world we have, and I'm going to make sure no one like Cersei ever rises again. You mean no one like you? Her lips twitched, just slightly. I'm not Cersei. She ruled with lies. I rule with truth and fire. That fire killed thousands, and it will save millions, she shot back. From tyrants, slavers, and monsters. I will free them all. Jon looked down at the melted sword near his feet, half covered in dust. It could have belonged to a guard or a child. There was no telling anymore. They were all burned the same. You said you'd break the wheel, he said, his voice cracking. But all you've done is rebuild it in flames. I broke it, Daenerys insisted. I shattered their kingdoms, their lies, their balance of power. I've given the world a new beginning. A beginning soaked in blood. She stepped forward, reaching for his hand. Help me, rule with me. You're the blood of the dragon, Jon. You understand. You always have. You just have to stop being afraid of what we are. Jon's jaw tensed. You think I'm afraid of power? No, you're afraid of yourself. Afraid of what it means to rule. But I'm not, and I'll carry it alone if I have to. There was a long silence, just wind blowing through the broken stones. He looked into her eyes and saw two things, love and something deeper than love. Obsession, purpose that would never break, never bend. She would not stop. Not here, not after this. She would burn again and again, until the world bent or broke. Outside the Red Keep, Arya Stark stood among the rubble, watching the unsullied march survivors into squares for questioning. She had followed the blood trail across the city. She had seen the charred bones of children, the collapsed homes with families buried inside, the Dothraki pulling gold from blackened hands, and she had made a decision. She's not going to stop, Arya said to Jon when she found him again. He didn't answer at first. She'll come for the north next, she added. Anyone who says no, anyone who doesn't kneel. You know it. Sansa won't bend. She's my queen, Jon whispered, more to himself than to her. Arya narrowed her eyes. Is she? He walked away without answering. Later that night, Daenerys stood at the steps of what remained of the Great Sept, now nothing but dust and bones. Her army gathered before her, endless rows of unsullied and Dothraki lit by torchlight. She spoke not in common tongue, but in Valyrian, sharp and commanding. You have freed this city, she declared. You have broken the chains of generations, and we will not stop here. We will go on to Dawn, to the Reach, to the north. The world will know freedom. The world will know us! The army roared in approval. Steel clanged on shields. Dothraki howled into the sky. Jon stood in the shadows, watching her speak. He looked down at his hands, then up at her. He didn't cheer, he didn't move. He just stared at the queen who wouldn't stop. The city remained in ruins, but something worse had begun to spread. Fear. Not the fear of war or dragons. This fear was silent, cold, creeping through the hearts of the people who had survived. It whispered from the alleys and echoed through the ashes. The queen brings fire. Jon walked the crumbled streets with Davos at his side, watching the unsullied drag survivors into camps. Dothraki horses galloped by, kicking up soot and scattered bones. Small folk no longer begged for food. They stayed quiet, heads down, mouths shut. This isn't liberation, Davos said grimly. It's occupation. Jon didn't respond. He'd heard those same words in his head since the fires went out. Daenerys hadn't just taken the throne, she'd taken everything with her. Burned it all down to build a kingdom in her own image. She means well, Jon muttered, though the words tasted like rot in his mouth. She meant well in Meereen too, Davos said. And Astapor, until the streets filled with crucified corpses. I served a king once who burned people alive for justice. Look how he ended up. Jon stopped walking. He remembered Stannis Baratheon. He remembered the little girl, Shireen, burned alive in the name of a greater cause, and he remembered the smell of Dragonstone, wildfire, fire, and death. He felt the same now. He felt the same now. Only worse. In the Red Keep, Daenerys paced alone in the broken throne room, the twisted iron throne behind her. Grey worms stood at the edge of the room, silent, waiting like a blade ready to be drawn. Tyrion had been found alive, buried beneath the rubble, wounded but breathing. He now sat in chains, hands bound, stripped of his hand's pin, his eyes sunken with loss. "You set the wildfire," he accused. Daenerys didn't deny it. "Cersei gave me a message. I returned one." "You killed thousands," he hissed. She stepped forward, calm. "Cersei killed millions before me with systems, with chains, with silence. I simply did it in a day." Tyrion shook his head. "You're not breaking the wheel. You've become it." Daenerys turned away from him, voice sharp. "You think peace comes from weakness? Mercy? No, Tyrion. Mercy is a luxury of the powerful. I'm not a queen of luxury. I am a queen of change. You sound like your father." She froze. For a moment, just a heartbeat. Her face cracked, then it hardened. "Take him back to the cells," she said. As Grey Worm dragged Tyrion away, she whispered under her breath, "They will thank me." One day, that night, Jon visited Tyrion's cell. The imp looked up from the cold floor, half expecting to see an executioner. Instead, he saw the man who once saved his life at Castle Black. "You were always too honorable for this world," Tyrion said. Jon didn't speak. "You love her," Tyrion continued. "I did too once. Not like you, but I believed in her. And she is still good. Somewhere. But she's convinced herself she has the right to do anything in the name of justice. That's not love. That's a god complex." Jon leaned against the wall. "She believes she's the only one who can fix the world, because she has dragons, power. And when has power ever been kind to the powerless?" Jon looked down, haunted. "I swore myself to her." Tyrion leaned forward, his eyes piercing. "So did I, and I helped her burn a city." Silence fell between them. Then Tyrion whispered, "Jon, it has to be you." Jon's heart slammed in his chest. "No, she trusts you," Tyrion said. "You're the last person she'll lower her guard for. If she goes on like this, there must be another way." "There isn't," Tyrion said coldly. "She will burn Winterfell next. Then Dorne. Then every place that doesn't kneel. You know her heart. You've seen it." Jon shook his head. "I won't kill the woman I love. Then she'll kill the woman I loved. The brother you loved, everyone." Tyrion leaned closer, deadly calm. "Sometimes love is the death of duty, and sometimes duty must kill love." Jon stood there a long time. He left without a word, but something inside him had cracked. The next morning, snow or ash fell softly from the sky. Daenerys stood alone in the broken throne room once again, touching the melted blades of the Iron Throne. She didn't hear Jon approach until he was only a few feet away. He looked at her as if seeing her for the last time. "I saw the throne once in a vision," she said softly. "I thought it would feel different. It doesn't, it's just a chair." "You've won," Jon said. "You can stop." She turned, eyes shining. "No, Jon, I've only just begun." His hand was shaking, her voice trembled. "You said you loved me." "I do." He stepped forward. He kissed her, and as her lips touched his, he drove the dagger into her heart. She gasped, her eyes wide, betrayal blooming across her face. Her hands gripped his chest, not to pull him closer, but to push away. Jon held her tightly as she fell, her breath shallow, her eyes fixed on him even as the life slipped away. "I'm sorry," he whispered, tears falling. "I'm so sorry." Her blood pooled beneath the Iron Throne, the throne she burned the world for. The world stood still. Jon held her until her final breath left her body, until the warmth faded from her skin, and her hands went limp against his chest. Her eyes, once burning with fire and vengeance, were now just empty. He laid her down gently on the cracked stone, surrounded by the rubble of what had once been power, what had once been legacy, what had once been hope. The Queen of Ashes was dead, and Jon Snow had killed her. His sword clattered beside him. His hands were shaking, not from fear, but from the awful silence that followed. A silence so complete it felt as though the very world was holding its breath. Then a sound, a low, guttural rumble. Drogon. The great beast landed in the ruined courtyard, sensing something had changed. He let out a cry so deep it echoed through the city, shattering what few windows still stood. Jon stood back slowly, his heart hammering. Drogon saw her. He stepped forward, cautiously at first. His huge, clawed feet crushed rubble and bones alike. His snout nudged her body once, twice. She didn't move. He let out another cry, this time not of rage but sorrow. A sound filled with pain, so pure and ancient it made Jon fall to his knees. Then came the fire, but not at Jon. Drogon roared and turned his head to the Iron Throne, the source of everything, of her ambition, of her destruction, and he burned it. He unleashed a torrent of dragon flame so hot the stone cracked and the metal groaned, melting into a pool of slag. The throne, once the symbol of power for centuries, was gone in seconds, ashes to ashes. When the flames died, Drogon turned back. For a moment, Jon thought his death had come. But Drogon didn't strike. He nudged Daenerys again, then gently slid his massive wing beneath her body. With the powerful beat of his wings, he rose into the air. Her body clutched gently in his claws, and he flew away, far over the sea, into the clouds, vanishing forever. The aftermath was quiet, too quiet. Grey Worm found Jon kneeling in blood, his face pale, empty, hollow. The Unsullied seized him without a word. They didn't kill him, not yet, but they dragged him in chains like a war criminal. Tyrion, still locked beneath the castle, heard the news in whispers. The queen was dead, the throne destroyed, the dragon gone. He sat in his cell and wept, not for her, not entirely, but for the realm, for what they had all done, for what they had allowed to happen. Weeks passed. The city began to rebuild, not by command, but by survival. The lords and ladies of Westeros were summoned to decide the fate of what remained. Sansa came from the north, cold-eyed and resolute. Arya returned briefly from the road, refusing any title or lordship. Gendry stood as Lord of Storm's End, unsure of what came next. Sam Tarly brought books, wisdom and hope, and Bran Stark, quiet and knowing, came last. Tyrion stood in chains, brought before them all. He told them the truth. He did not justify what Jon had done. He explained it. He spoke of Daenerys' vision, her fire, her spiral into vengeance. She believed she was good, Tyrion said, that she was the answer. And for a time we believed it too. But the world doesn't need fire. It needs balance. It needs someone who does not want the crown. Silence. Then Sansa said, "And who do you suggest?" Tyrion turned slowly to the boy in the chair. Bran the Broken, the world's memory. A ruler who cannot father children. A king who has no ambition. A man who cannot be bribed, swayed, or corrupted, Bran blinked once. "Why do you think I came all this way?" And so for the first time, Westeros chose its king. Jon Snow was spared execution, but sent to the wall once more, this time not as punishment but penance. The last Targaryen, sent to the cold to guard a world that had changed forever. Grey Worm sailed away with the Unsullied. Broken and leaderless, to seek justice in far lands, Arya sailed west. Beyond the edge of maps, Sansa ruled the north as queen in the north. Free and fierce, and Bran sat upon a new throne, not of swords, but of wood and unity. Jon stood once more at Castle Black, watching the snowfall, Ghost beside him, silent and loyal. The gate opened slowly, revealing wildlings waiting to return home. He looked beyond the wall, not as a jailer this time, but as a man finally free. He said nothing. He rode north, into the snow, into the quiet, and behind him, the wheel that had crushed kings and queens for generations was finally broken, the end. Was finally broken, the end.